All right, let's go ahead and call this meeting of the Isanti City Council to order. We want to welcome the county here as well. You want to call your meeting to order, and then we'll rise for the pledge? All right, doing roll call for the Isanti City Council. We have all four of our members present, minus our vacant position.
Roll call for the county. We are all present with the exception of Commissioner Mike Waring.
Do we have any public comment?
Hello, good evening. My name is Don Howard. I'm the manager of Isanti Village Apartments. I attended the county meeting last Tuesday, and I just wanted to come before the Isanti City Council and express my concerns a little bit with the options that are being considered, because a lot of them are sort of putting to the side our exit out of our community of 100 people and also the strip mall traffic. It would be right at the beginning of the roundabout, and the red light would lock us in with traffic coming from the west. I just think, the idea of purchasing land possibly could be a good idea for future purposes down the road, but I think it would be beneficial to really look at a few simpler type adjustments that could be made to the intersection that would solve a lot of the problems that you're getting ready to solve with some major construction projects. Like, one example would be if you were to put a median from 50 to 100 feet to the west of that intersection to 50 to 100 feet to the east of that intersection, and take away all left turns from 5 and from Dual Boulevard onto 5. I think the citizens will realize how they can go about getting to, if it's Quick Trip they're trying to go to, or 65, but it would take the congestive part of that whole intersection right out of the equation. Because, like I said, it's a challenging endeavor to try to leave our complex during rush hour times in the morning and in the afternoons. That would also, nobody from our exit could make a left turn either, which would be perfect, because that causes some additional congestion as well. And I travel it every day, numerous times in and out, and you'll see me 99% of the time take a right and go around Minco and come in on Main Street. But I would just, hesitate on trying to take on some big projects, throw a couple roundabouts and think it's going to solve the problem, because if you ever watch the traffic, I think you're still going to have some problems. So that's all I have to say.
Can I ask a question at this time? Sure. Tonight we're going to talk about potential for a land acquisition. Would it alleviate the concern of your exit if your parking lot exit was rerouted onto a potential extra road?
We talked a little bit about that. The problem is even with that, you probably could design it so it's not, again, in the roundabout traffic.
Right.
If it was to the point where it was unaffected by roundabout and being blocked in, yes, that would alleviate it. But right now, these are just going to block us in.
Depending on which option we end up choosing.
Yeah,
Yes,
with the exception of the additional road and how that was configured.
Sure. Thanks for coming in. I appreciate the input on that one.
Thank you, Don. Any other public comment? All right. You want a public comment, or you want to, basically?
Do we have any public comment from the county's perspective? Hearing none, is a motion in order then to close the public comment? Is that what we want to do?
We don't usually motion for it, but I don't know, yeah. All right, we'll move on to adopting the agenda. Any modifications?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Commissioners. No, the city staff does not have any agenda modifications.
Motion to adopt the agenda on the city side.
Is there any agenda or modifications?
Oh, we've got to
from
adopt
the-
ours, and then they'll
Right,
adopt
yeah.
theirs, and we'll kind of take turns going back and forth here, so.
Second.
I have a motion to adopt the agenda from Councilman Merrill and a second from Councilman Lundin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0.
We'll ask the same question on the county side. Staff, do we have any changes to the agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Westerberg. Second by Commissioner LaRoe to adopt agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We agree with the agenda.
All right.
Yeah, you might need to slide it closer.
I know Commissioner LaRose isn't though. There it is.
We've got home field advantage here. Moving on to F1, the preferred intersection layout discussion and selection. So I don't know, I mean, do we want to kind of have a little bit of a backstory, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, so Mayor, I'm going to go through and just share the different alternative options, and then based off feedback that we've heard, starting as far back as October 3rd, when Mr. Cook gave his presentation of the WSB presentation to the city council that day, and then share some advantages of benefits and drawbacks to each option that have been shared by council or things that we've heard. So I'll go through those 5 options, and then I will turn it over to Mr. Cook, and he can share and answer any questions that you have that are specific to each layout option. And then we can go forward with the commissioner side as well. Put it up for our Facebook viewers. All right. So the first one is alternative layout option number 1. This is with the 3-leg signal. Some of the benefits that have been shared regarding this option is that it is the lowest project cost. It stops traffic to allow for other side street vehicles to access Heritage Boulevard or County Road 5. It stops traffic for pedestrians. It's easier intersection for semi-trailers and larger vehicles to get through. Some of the drawbacks have been shared about this option. It's not the highest level of service rating. Future corridor improvements would likely need to occur with increased traffic volume. There's ongoing light maintenance costs, impact to residents and business traffic, particularly 120 Heritage Boulevard, which is of the Isanti Villa Apartments and the strip mall where Subway is there. Limited left turn onto Credit Union Drive due to stacking concerns. No turn lane from East Jewel onto Heritage Boulevard, which we could possibly add. And traffic accessing Heritage for westbound leaving Credit Union Drive would need to travel approximately 3/4 of a mile or about 12 blocks over to Dahlin. And I have another image of that I'll just pull up here so you can see what I'm talking about. So here, so if there was no left turn out of Credit Union Drive onto Heritage, CASA 5, vehicles would need to travel down Credit Union, drive here to Main Street and go up Dahlin. So that's just showing that route there. Okay, the next option layout that we have, option number 2, is of a stoplight, but this is a 4-leg stoplight. Some of the benefits from this option is that it does stop traffic to allow for other side street vehicles to access Heritage Boulevard, stops traffic for pedestrians, easier intersection for semi-trailers and larger vehicles, better access potential to solve Credit Union or 120 Heritage, which are the apartments down here, is that Mr. Hansen spoke at public comment, and then this is at Strip Mall. You had asked Councilmember Merrill about possibly putting an access point onto that 4th leg. In talking to City Engineer Cook, we would anticipate something right around here. If you can look at the hand on that image before you, that kind of shows where it potentially could go. Another option that could be explored is to close off this exit because in fact, true, it is too close to the intersection. We could widen this, possibly make it in and out on that side. Just to also point out, the apartment buildings down here, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's 97 units? 96 units. There is not another exit point for these properties here, so that is a lot of traffic coming in and out of those 2 points currently. Other benefit is that it is a reduction to a single intersection between East Jewel and Trunk Highway 65. So because this is closed off here, which it is possible to consider a right-in, right-out, you don't have any other traffic coming until you get over to Trunk Highway 65 for another intersection.
Now, I just want to clarify quickly, all of these, we can sort of tweak, these plans, correct? So if we said we didn't want that, Minco or Credit Union Drive to be closed, we could have it open, as we have discussed in the past. Just, this is for the major, scope of work, but we can adjust stuff, correct?
Correct. We could make some adjustments. It is possible that we could have this be open and make some modifications currently, and then if it posed more of a higher concern down the road with increased traffic volume, we could address it again later. Some of the drawbacks that were shared with this intersection layout option is the level of service is not sustained for long-term. The study that was done by WSB does not utilize the most recent traffic data count. Requires land acquisition for an additional cost for that fourth leg. Closes off access currently as shown to Credit Union Drive, which gives it a poor level of service for vehicles looking to get out there. And it lessens commercial development by one lot, which lessens tax benefit, which because that would be the city acquiring this parcel here, which is listed as commercial.
But the only thing I want to say about that, if Minco was to sell that property to somebody, they say it's 61,000 square foot, and if you do the math with the easements that are on that property, that cuts it down to like 27,000 square feet usable. So I used the terms when we discussed this was you could put a double outhouse in there with the parking spots, and that's about all you're gonna get out of it. So that property value, yes, it's 61,000 square feet, but what's usable is less than half. So at that point, it's not as usable as a person would think as a commercial property.
Okay, we'll move on to layout option number 3. This is of the double mini roundabout. Some benefits shared of this is that it's best level of service as identified through the report from WSB. It's the longest forecasted solution for that intersection for the entire corridor here. Roundabouts have been reported to be safer for pedestrians. It gives full access in and out to Credit Union Drive. It's a wider entrance as modified or as shown in this diagram to have a wider diesel entrance because that has been of a concern too currently of the way that people tried to come out that somewhat entrance, so it would be reworking that. And no further need to acquire land current or in the future with this option. Some of the drawbacks that were shared were westbound lane drop from Trunk Highway 65, so that's here, this lane drop. Stacking in between the mini roundabouts, we got approximately 300 feet here, and as was presented in a modeling video from WSB that I have, and we can look at that again this evening, that there shows stacking in there. It does not stop traffic to allow for other side streets to access Heritage, so looking beyond the railroad tracks to the west is a concern. One lane entering and exiting both mini roundabouts, and there could be some plowing and semi-difficulty navigating. I do want to point out that these are mini roundabouts that have a surmountable curb and actually just concrete in the center of these circles here, so it wouldn't have landscaping.
So in our meeting, we had discussed that these lower roundabouts are actually probably better for trucks and trailers and semi-drivers than even the stoplight. If you look at the electrical box on the southwest corner of Quick Trip there, it's always getting hit by semis because it's hard for a semi to come to a stoplight and swing wide enough, especially on a one-lane road. So these roundabouts would actually be better for semi-traffic because they can literally drive straight over them because they're only a 4-inch curb. I just wanted to point that out. I think this is actually the better solution for trucks and trailers.
Then the next option is alternative option number 4. This is of a mini roundabout still, but only at one intersection and with a fourth leg. So this at Eastwell Boulevard. Some of the benefits is that it is one controlled intersection there, reduced stacking concerns. Roundabouts have been reported to be, again, safer for pedestrians. It does show that there is no turn lane here on East Jewel, but I think, again, that's one of those things that could potentially be modified as that was shared, that it maybe would be better to have in, out, and a turn. No, I take it back, that was of the light, sorry, that's going around the roundabout, so you gotta go left, or right. Sorry, ignore that. Some drawbacks of this one that have been shared is that this is the highest project cost of all 5 options. The level of service is not determined to be long-term, as this was also not within the new traffic count data. It requires land acquisition for an additional cost, which was right here. Westbound lane transition to 1 from trunk highway, so again, that lane drop. It does not stop traffic to allow for other side streets down on Heritage. And it closes off, as shown, access to Credit Union Drive. Potentially could be modified, maybe a right in, right out, and then if future needed to be, again, something that could be considered. And then lastly, before I turn it over to the council to ask questions, and then if the county wants to go through their options or issue items with this, last is the number 5 option. So this is of a mini roundabout, 3 legs with a potential build for, in the future for the 4th. Some of the benefits is that this is the second lowest cost upfront initially, not when you add in the 4th leg. It does allow for access off of Credit Union Drive here, as shown. Some of the drawbacks are the same that were listed in the other areas. Level of service is not determined to be long-term, as this was not completed with the study like the other options were. Utilizing the most recent traffic data, requires land acquisition sometime in the future, right here. And then that westbound lane, again, dropping to 1. And then it doesn't allow for stopping of traffic for any of the other side streets. So those are the 5 layout options, a recap, and just items that were shared. The items that I shared, whether it be a benefit or a drawback, have been just a collection of discussions over the many times that this has been discussed, both at the city council and at the commissioner board.
So I had another potential idea. So we have that 500-foot lane drop. I suppose that's mostly used for PD to pull people over in, where it's kind of goes into 3rd lane and then gets retracted. Last meeting, we had talked about how the that storage shed there for the gas line is going to be removed. So I have sort of another hybrid idea of all these. We don't have the traffic information, but it's kind of piggybacking off of George's idea at the last meeting. I would think it would be a good option to maybe continue that lane all the way through. So instead of a single lane roundabout, you have a 2-lane roundabout, and then potentially purchase property next to Quick Trip and run another street around Quick Trip and entrance it onto East Dual Boulevard. Sort of like if you're traveling eastbound on Heritage now, and you see that maybe the East Dual Boulevard intersection is crowded, you can actually take a left onto the street by the hardware store and follow that around. And I think if we were to sort of add that street that goes around Quick Trip, it would really alleviate East Dual Boulevard, the congestion that's there. I know it's another acquisition, but I think we need to look at the best long-term solution for this. I don't want to have something that's going to work for 10 years and then have to totally re-engineer it for, in 10 years and spend the money again. So I think it'd be to our advantage to maybe look into something like that now that we know that that shed is going to be removed or not in use.
Where is access for this property? I mean, in the
That's
future,
another
are we gonna run into a problem where they're gonna want an entrance here in the middle?
That's another thing with, if we add the road between Quick Trip and that farm property, I mean, if someone wants to ever develop that, they're never gonna get access from the state or the county to have an easement to enter onto that property. So if we added a road between the Quick Trip and that field, that would then give access to that whole field for future development, which you're gonna have to have. So, I mean, if we don't consider something strong now, we're gonna handcuff ourselves later. That's really the only solution I see, and I'm kind of disappointed that WSB didn't sort of see something like that as a potential option.
That is
I don't,
property too.
that's a big commercial property that, I mean, there's no other way to entry over to that area unless you somehow get UPS's land. So you'd have to build a road between 444 and Quick Trip. Now, I looked at 444 today, and on the south side is their entrance to their building. There's a garage door there, so we might have to pay them to maybe relocate their garage door to the other north side of the building. But I think if we were to do something like that, it would give us the best long-term solution. Or if you went all the way up to UPS, if they have land, I think that would give us, best access to all of those parcels there in the future. And it would help alleviate our issue at East Dual and Heritage.
Yes, Councilman Merrill there. So that little strip of parcel right there
Yep,
is actually city-owned, and we've actually
Okay.
already evaluated setting that up for the road to connect over. It's part of our master plan to access that farm field and all those farm fields, but the 3 parcels there. The ultimate plan, I believe, with the reason for down on County Road 5, that bump outs that's there was intended for at least a right-in, right-out type of an entrance
Right.
to that property. And so the master plan was that would be a right-in, right-out off of the county road, because the median's already there. And that it would be able to go up and tie over in the way you're describing, on the, up the middle of that farm field parcel, should it develop, and then tie in up, all the way up, in line with North Dual Boulevard there.
but wouldn't that make the traffic congestion worse on Heritage? Because you have that congestion, you have another point where there's gonna be a third intersection. Basically, you're adding to that whole mix that's too close to 65.
So if this was able to all, connect through, you'd actually be able to divert the traffic that's trying to bypass all this, and they'd be able to go up and over to dodge it. So I could reduce it on that, if that right out, is, or I should say, the right in for the westbound traffic.
Right.
To be able to leave before they get into all this, so it actually could reduce the congestion. And the fact that it would be a right in, right out only, is never gonna add any of that cross-traffic left turn, issues where you're gonna have backups on that future interchange, should it even end up existing. But so that's the master plan. We already have that in our capital improvement plan, or our comprehensive plan. We tried to modify the current layout and try and put the road, or a city street where Quick Trip's, current parking lot is. We'd have to reconstruct all that and buy all that easement and right-of-way, that would be more on the magnitude of at least $1 million of a project. And considering we already have the master plan on how the farm field would ultimately have an interconnected road system, I wouldn't recommend we try and wedge one up against parcels that already have access, as opposed to getting a new road that's centered on future, lots that would need access. Because if we push it on that property line, there'd have to be a whole nother grid of roads in that farm field to service whatever platted lots end up coming. Now, regarding the thought of possibly adding an extra isolated turn lane into Quick Trip, that would kind of extend that bumped out area.
Right.
As just a right out, isolated, separated lane. That could be something that could be looked at geometrically on just pulling anybody trying to go to Quick Trip off of any of these scenarios to reduce how many are actually fully having to enter the roundabouts. And that could be how we would modify, if the double mini was chosen, we could eliminate the actual exit off the roundabout, and it could just be, slightly pushed off separate turn lane. But that'd be something we'd have to size up. But yeah, from Josie's hand there, if you just went straight west, well, sure, yeah, like that. That could reduce that
Stacking.
congestion of zippering everybody, if you could feed off the people that are only going to Quick Trip. But that'd be the only thing I think that would maybe make sense to add that extra lane worth of work, because otherwise that all the way end around is in our master plan, but it would be further over.
I think, I understand the master plan stuff, but during the master planning process, I don't think it was ever discussed that shed could be gone, as well as, these intersections weren't really anything that had been considered. That had to have been years ago. So I don't see how, I understand what you're saying, but I don't see how having adding another intersection in the lane drop area there would help anything. I would worry that would cause stacking onto 65. So, I mean, I see it as you have two roundabouts that have perfect access in all these locations. You keep it simple. It's gonna cost more money, but it's gonna be the best and safest long-term option. I mean, we can't keep doing Band-Aids on this. This should have been addressed years ago.
One
And-
thing, if I could, Councilman Merrill, I don't want to cut you off, but I think that we should allow the county to call their first item.
Sure.
And then we can hear from county staff if they have any feedback, and they might have answers or information provided on some of that.
Okay.
And then you could go back, or go into discussion between the two entities.
No problem.
Thank you for that switch over to us then at the county. I want to say thank you to the mayor and council for the lengthy discussions you've had to get to this point. We appreciate that. All government is local, so we really respect your viewpoints on this, and it's a tough question that we need to really work on tonight. With that, I will turn it over to our staff. Amanda, maybe you can make some opening comments on the options, like Josie did, and then we hear from our engineer. If you would like to go that route. Okay, sure.
Right.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Commissioner Duff. So as the city went through some of the alternatives, I will do the same, kind of hit it high level as we've seen a lot of these layouts, even at our committee of the whole this afternoon. So alternative one would be that three-legged signalized intersection. Some of the comments, you know, as the city had addressed, this does not address long-term solutions. You know, we do see in the 2043 build-out that there is going to be some operational concerns. Also, too, focusing in on safety, kind of the roundabout signal discussion. If you look at signalized intersections, just because of the rate of speeds, you know, compared to a roundabout, there is proven studies that the roundabout option, just given that you're not going 30 miles an hour in a T-bone type interaction, there is some safety benefit to that compared to the signal. So looking at that as more of a drawback on a signalized intersection. Long-term, you know, we have the maintenance costs, push-button systems, we have loop detectors, we have electricity to power those signals, preemption systems. There's a lot of costs, a lot of moving parts on a signalized intersection. Moving on to alternative two, that is our option for. That's our option for the four-legged signalized intersection. Again, you know, operationally, this does go into 2043. That solves some of the operational issues that we would have seen at Credit Union Drive. Some of the downsides is obviously kind of the subject matter of the land acquisition. This would require either with long-term planning for a phase effort on that fourth leg to make sure that that's functionally operational into the future. We do, you know, there's been discussion on Credit Union Drive, how to handle that intersection. You know, on the figures, preliminary plans shows it as a closed off to CASA 5. From a county standpoint, you know, obviously that would be the preference, but understandably with access to local businesses, a right-in, right-out option could be something to consider during design phase. Moving on to alternative three, the proposed dual mini roundabout option. Again, that modeling that was provided by WSB, it showed, you know, I think there was a question or concern raised whether that traffic queuing would stack onto Trunk Highway 65. That modeling showed PM peak hours in the 2043 build conditions. And obviously it's a model. It's probably a little conservative in nature if we're looking at how long a traffic or a vehicle is stopping and yielding to other traffic in those roundabouts. But again, I think there's some uneasiness about how the operational aspect in 2043, both from city and county. However, you know, looking at the report, looking at the level of service, this does hit kind of all the stops. It adequately addresses operations and safety at Credit Union Drive and East Dual Boulevard. Long-term level of service, it does provide that benefit for the level of service of both intersection. Again, it's, you know, with the dual mini roundabout, it encourages slower movements through that area for pedestrian safety. And the biggest benefit too is not having that land acquisition. You know, that being kind of the elephant in the room of, you know, there's been discussions on that value as we go into closed session, but, you know, that might have some bearing on the decision. Alternative four is the option for a four-legged roundabout. Again, that has kind of the option to be phased as shown in alternative 5. However, we are looking at that land acquisition and whether it makes sense for that return on investment. Operationally, this is, functional into that 2043 build. Those traffic counts, as Josie mentioned, on those two alternatives, 2 and 4, the level of service that we received from WSP was from the initial report that had traffic counts from 2016. Since the amendment to the report, we went out there, got traffic counts, got the updated increase on Eastwood Boulevard showing that increased about threefold. So that's not in that level of service. I just wanted full disclosure for comparing apples to apples. However, looking at it and being reasonable, looking at some of our options and whether that's one intersection, that wasn't updated just due to that 2 and 4 cost prohibitiveness of getting the land acquisition. Those options were tabled prior to these meetings. And lastly, looking at alternative 5, we have the combination of looking at a future potential build-out. It does restrict Credit Union Drive to a left-out 3/4 turn. Again, that's likely going to be closed in the future just due to the operational aspect from level of service and also the safety aspect from having that long, long crossing of the travel lanes to make that left turning movement. With that, I will stand for any questions from our county board.
Any questions or comment, commissioners?
Which one do you prefer?
The preference, like I said, there's kind of it's a twofold question. Is the investment to that property on the market price that we've been privy to, is that worth the alternatives of 2 and 4? Otherwise, if we're looking at land acquisition, we're kind of boiling down to that dual menu roundabout just for long-term operational aspects.
Well, that's the bottom line, isn't it? Do we want to address this down, well, we may not, but somebody may, we want to do it so that it's not an issue 15 years down the road. So,
How do you feel about option 5?
Option 5, I don't want to mislead folks. I truly think that left 3/4 turn out, having access to Credit Union Drive, looking at the level of service, looking at some of the crash data, I don't foresee that being a long-term viable access. I think in the future case, that would be closed off. That would be a right-in, right-out, which again, comes back to impact to local businesses from the city. Do we want to reroute businesses back down around the Main Street, Darlene North, back on the Cassav 5?
Any other questions, comments, commissioners?
I like option 3 there with, again, potential land acquisition in the future if necessary. I don't think the land is super attractive to a business, especially if there's not direct access onto County 5. So potentially that property land value would come down, and then we could purchase it in the future and hold on to it once that property comes down there. But I do feel like the mini roundabouts and what I've heard and studied and listened to on Freakonomics and all that, it's the best way to move traffic, to keep people moving. It's the safest way, both for pedestrians, for drivers as well. It's the least maintenance over the long haul. And if you need to change or tweak something, you can do that. So I think, if it does service us 15 years out or so and we have to make some adjustments, then I think you have to make some adjustments. But I think from the starting point of where we're at, I think it looks good. Not to mention the experts over the long haul who has done the study for us. That would be their recommendation as well.
Justin, I want to ask, you've said several times the ongoing operational costs associated with lights. Can you illuminate us with a number? Is it 10,000 a year, 20, 50?
It's a good question, Commissioner Duff. It's kind of it's a variable, electrical costs might be on the order of our current signal on Whiskey Road, Cassav 23 and Cassav 5. That's on the order of $80 a month for electrical costs. It really depends on how, if those bulbs, if they burn out and replacement of those. We're dealing with some of the push button issues from the older style. They call it elf or clown nose type push button and some of those, as loop detectors fail too. I don't know an exact cost on operational. I've done some research and looked at it on the order of, I want to say some of the figures from FHWA were around 4,000 to 5,000, but that would be dependent on both climate and, you know, the systems that are in place.
What's the cost, but not overly significant?
No. I think, as I mentioned earlier in our county meeting, the statistics as far as overall safety, when it comes to roundabouts as opposed to traffic lights, statistically, 86% decrease in fatal crashes, 83% decrease in life-altering injury crashes, 42% overall decrease in injury crash rate at intersections. And the statistics are stronger as well when there's pedestrian use as well, less fatalities or injuries to pedestrians as well. What I've read and looked at as well, there's literally cities that are pulling out their traffic lights and putting in roundabouts and doing it more and more. So I think, you know, it tells us what the future looks like as far as between the options of roundabouts versus stoplights. So.
Yeah, great points, Commissioner Berg. And I would also add on to that, you know, the topic that was brought up, or kind of the point that was brought up earlier in committee of the whole, is also the fuel efficiency and kind of level of service on those off-peak hours. So the functionality of a roundabout, I think you made the case or the analogy, if you're at 5 a.m., you're getting your coffee at Quick Trip and you're trying to take a left or right on a left on East Dual Boulevard southbound on the CASA 5. There's a roundabout there. Smooth sailing.
You just go, otherwise you're sitting there waiting for lights. The Freakonomics thing said you can save your people $2 to $3 million in gas costs because you're just sitting at a light as opposed to moving. Your emissions rate goes down within your communities because you're not sitting there as well. So, yeah, in every aspect, it's just better.
Commissioner LaRoe, any comments?
Yeah, so I like the alternative 5, and then just with the fact that hopefully we could negotiate something with buying that piece of land at some point. I don't think we need 2 intersections where people have to whip through. I think we just need 1. I don't think it's necessary. It's just such a short distance between the stoplight and credit union, and then you got the next one coming up, and then you have your train tracks. So I just don't think it's feasible for the buses that go through. I can see where we would get possibly locked in, where they're gonna be stuck at those roundabouts. So that's concerning to me.
Thank you. I'm talking with Mayor Jimmy here, I think. Are we ready to move forward? We talked about? Yeah. What I would like to do at this point now is, what we've talked about here is maybe just have each commissioner give their thought on their preferred option at this time, because I think we have to start moving in the direction of what are the design options that we kind of want to focus in on. Does that make sense for everyone here? Let's start with our commissioners. We'll start with Commissioner Berg.
And if I may interrupt just for a minute, Commissioner and Mayor and Council Commissioner. So when you pick an option, if your option has a 4th leg in it, can you also please an alternative option if you have like a preferred 1 and 2? Because that'll be important as we go into the next steps, next discussion points, if we don't end up moving forward with trying to acquire the land.
Thank you. Commissioner Berg?
Yeah, I prefer option 3 here with potential future acquisition of the property depending on price there. From that, then I would probably prefer number 4 if the acquisition of the property took place. But I suppose the
Thank you. Commissioner Westerberg?
Yeah, I would look at 4 or 5. I'm pretty open on this, but 3 is a second option, but probably number 4 is my first option. 4 or 5, either one would be good for me. 4 would be my number 1. Yep.
And your second option? 5 or 3?
Could go either way on that. I could be persuaded on that, so, I mean, and, you know, it's hard to say 3 or 5. I'm gonna leave that open for right now.
Thank you. Commissioner LaRoe?
I guess I'm gonna switch it. 1 would be alternate 4, and then 2 would be 5.
And I will, first of all, make a comment that to me, in looking at this, as I've said from the get-go, number 1 consideration for me is the safety of our citizens and our businesses. Number 2 is the long-term, just looking into that crystal ball, what's this gonna look like, and it's hard for all of us to do. I appreciated the conversation on your large commercial property, because, boy, that's gonna change things a lot too in the city, so I really appreciated those comments. And 3, I mean, it boils down to the dollars, so this land acquisition discussion will be interesting. With that as a backdrop, I guess my options, I prefer are pretty similar to what Commissioner Westerberg shared, something along the lines of 4, 5, and 3. Yes, with flexibility to discuss. I'm gonna try to be open-minded on here, so 4, 5, and 3, something along those lines.
All right, so I think I'd like to do the kind of the same thing on our side, just so we can kind of see where we're at, and then kind of solidify some opinions maybe after that. So, George, if you want to start down there, and
I guess I would be number 1, option 4, number 2 would be 3. That was,
Okay, so for me, I'm hardcore on number 3. I think that's going to give us the best future development everywhere. And that also gives us a little bit of risk protection if, say, that property never comes up for sale or we can't get it. This is still a good solution for the next 20 to 30 years for sure. And then we can look at adding on another street there. I worry about the development in that farm field, and I think the roundabout at Credit Union Drive would help with that. I'd rather kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I don't see any negative side of the roundabouts, so that's my option, and I would go number 3 as my first choice, but I want to look into the addition of the extra leg off of East Dual Boulevard in that roundabout.
Councilmember Merrill, so to have a 4th leg to option 3, similar to what Commissioner
Yes.
Berg stated?
So that's basically a hybrid of option 5. So it's option 5, but instead of having Credit Union Drive being a regular intersection there, which making a left there is a mess, that's never gonna work. I would rather see a roundabout there because roundabouts keep traffic flowing. And then we could also, I would like to see us go to a 3-lane, or use that whole area there by that storage shed, so that maybe we could keep the stacking off of Highway 65 if we had a 2-lane roundabout on the north side of that. I don't know if that would work, but I would assume if you're gonna have 3 lanes and you have more room to work with, you're gonna get less stacking. So I don't think any of these options are very good, the way they're drawn. I'm a little bit disappointed in the conflicting data we've been getting through this process, so if I were to choose one, it'd be number 3 because it gives us the best flexibility and the best risk aversion for the future.
what was your second favorite?
None of them. I don't see any of the other ones working because if you take alternative 5, and like Jason stated a bunch of times, if you try and take a left at a Credit Union Drive there in that median, you're really a sitting duck. Right now, I mean, I've been driving that road. I live right over here. I've been driving that road for 15 years, and it's nothing but headaches there the way it is. And doing this roundabout here is going to do absolutely nothing for Credit Union Drive, especially if we don't get the connection that we're looking for with that property acquisition. So I mean, if we were to do option 5 and not get that property acquisition, I don't think that's gonna help anybody any one bit at all. So I just don't see how we could choose anything but option 3, but that's just my opinion.
Option 3 with the potential to acquire land to make a fourth leg off that.
Yes, and then potential for a fourth leg off of Credit Union Drive, north by Quick Trip, even though it's never really been discussed, other than at the last meeting. I think that gives the best development in that farm field. I'm gonna go out on a guess here and say that we would probably never see, an easement approval for that development there right off of Heritage Boulevard, that close to 65. I mean, I don't see how, if we already have traffic concerns, how that would work there in the middle. So you really have to have it at this roundabout because you only have 2 intersections versus having 3, so.
Steve, what do you think?
I have been set on this from day one as stoplights, and I will always contend to that. I've talked to numerous farmers about the double roundabout, and everyone is cussing and swearing. I imagine Miss LaRoe's husband would probably be one of them in the same way. Grain bin trucks going through there. Anytime you're driving over curbs, you're gonna have issues. I don't care. Has any of you ever driven through Forest Lake at rush hour with their double roundabouts? I've been coming up 61 going north, trying to avoid some of the cluster on 35. And I've sat in Forest Lake for 20 minutes trying to get around through those double roundabouts. This is at 4:30 in the afternoon. And 61 does not have the traffic 5 does. I've driven through tons of these roundabouts, and I don't care what you're gonna say, Luke. I respect your opinion, and as well as you should respect mine. I've driven through thousands of these roundabouts throughout the state, and I'm sure George Heeman has also. They are a pain in the butt for traffic getting in and out during rush hour times. So that being said, I've always been in favor of number 1. We can, if we ever acquisition that land, if that ever comes through, we can always make that a 4-way stop. So with that being said, I would do 1, 2, and 5.
Okay. So for me, I guess I would prefer the stoplight option with number 2 as being the one that I would like to see. I think it keeps 2 lanes of traffic heading westbound, which I think one of the problems that we saw with the mini double roundabout was that traffic stacking in between the roundabouts and stacking prior to that. And I think, in my opinion, even on that modeling that we saw, it didn't have anywhere near the amount of southbound traffic coming onto 5 from Cambridge that I think is accurate. I mean, even if you just had today's numbers, I don't think it was really laying it out very well. So, so I like number 2, but I would make a little bit of an adjustment in that I would try to make Credit Union Drive right in, right out, so that it keeps that flow going that way. And then I like the idea of, widening the entrance into the subway mall area in the Isanti Village Apartments, and then doing that exit over to what would be that new road there. So I think, to me, that, and I don't mind roundabouts necessarily. I think a single roundabout, if I had to choose the second option, I mean, I still probably would say number 1 is my second option with the stoplight. Yeah, I mean, I could be talked into option number 4, I guess, if I had to compromise with the single roundabout. Or I guess it'd be option 5 with the single roundabout, but yeah, if we had the opportunity to get the land acquisition, I would prefer to see the stoplight with the 4th leg. So that's kind of where I sit.
I just want to bring something up. I've told Mayor Gordon this and Councilman Merrill, is I do like his idea. I actually was talking to Mayor Gordon about it, just as he brought it up, is where that lane dips back in to any of these options that we have. That would be awesome if we left that in as a turn truck lane only into Quick Trip. That will alleviate a lot of problems on that. But the only thing that I can see about that, people are gonna get all antsy and up in arms trying to wait for that roundabout to get through, and they're gonna whip through Quick Trip's parking lot, and we're gonna get somebody killed that's walking out from the building to the car. I have to look at worst-case scenario. You know, when you drive through the cities every day, you see a lot of weird things. You see a lot of people doing a lot of stupid things. So I have to look at it as that could be a potential problem. But I do like that idea of extending that lane all the way up to that first entrance to Quick Trip and make that a truck turn lane only on any of these scenarios. Because that will help a lot of traffic if it's a single roundabout, or if it's the three-way stop or a four-way stoplight, it would still alleviate a lot of those trucks coming in there.
So I guess I had something to add to what Steve had said. So I know myself, I drive a truck and trailer quite a bit, and I know George does too. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I would much rather see roundabouts than stoplights, especially these low curb ones. They're way easier to navigate. You don't have to stop and try and get momentum again. When you're carrying a load, it takes quite a bit of time. And stoplight, you're gonna see more backlog because these semis are gonna have to stop, and then they restart again, and the backlog from those is gonna be a lot higher than it would be with the roundabouts. Whenever I see a roundabout and I'm hauling a heavy load, I love it, because it's just way better for everybody. Me and George do it all the time, so I mean, to say that the roundabouts aren't better for big traffic, I think that's not necessarily correct. And I think, like I was saying, if we can have, like Steve had just mentioned, make that turn lane optional there for into Quick Trip. But like I was saying, if we had a road that traveled north there along that line, that would also alleviate traffic. So if you think about it, when you drive through Cambridge on County Road 95 and you're going westbound towards the tracks, if you see a big line of traffic backed up, a lot of people will turn right or turn left at strikes, and they'll go around the traffic. So if you incorporate that leg northbound off of Credit Union Drive next to Quick Trip, that gives them the option to go left or to go right to their destination. So if you have an option that goes right, you're probably gonna see, I mean, anybody that's going to UPS, Junction Bowl, any of the industrial businesses up there in the industrial park, even people at Jimmy's Pizza, they might take that little loop around, or anybody that's in the housing developments that are by the soccer complex. You have another access way to get to that area, and sort of alleviate the traffic flow issue at East Dual Boulevard. And then it also adds for the commercial development in the farmland there. So I think if we were to go with, the roundabout the dual roundabout gives us the most potential for future issues. It doesn't tie our hands with anything. As Jason has said, it kind of gives us the most flexibility. So I think, I just want to say, as someone that hauls a truck and heavy trailer a lot, these roundabouts are much better than a stoplight.
I have a question for either of our city engineers or administrators, city or county. The city of St. Francis, I don't know if that's Anoka or city, but by the high school has a double roundabouts. And it seems to be working pretty well. Does anybody know any empirical data on how that has been working?
Yeah, I guess I don't.
A little bit, but not extensively. It's a similar concept, similar layout of the land. You got the school buses coming in and out of it.
They're normal, yes. They have an island in the middle which creates a visibility block, and those aren't great for a truck and trailer because you can't drive straight through those. Yep, and you can't see around them as well. I don't like those options as much as the minis for.
They'd have to be way bigger.
Yeah, we don't have the room for that, but I think if if you separate the traffic everywhere it needs to go in a more efficient manner, I don't think we'd ever have backup problems on the 65.
I think the other piece, when Commissioner Duff mentioned safety, just statistically, again, from the Freakonomics, it's roundabouts are 1 in 100,000 as far as death rate. Stoplights are 4 per 100,000, but if it's a main traveled thoroughfare like County 5 here, then it's up to 9 to 12 deaths, just because of the speeds. People taking that risk to get through that yellow or red light there as well. I think too, the roundabout piece that is designed on number 3, I believe provides good access for our businesses as well.
Yep.
I think you get into number 4, I think Minco, the dollar store, I think there's gonna be some challenges, people coming off 65 heading west and they want to do business at Minco or some of those businesses back there, and then they got to hit that roundabout, go all the way back in and stuff. So I just feel like it services our businesses more and attracts more business to the area for that piece.
I also wanted to say that just yesterday, there was an accident on 65 and Heritage Boulevard, and that's just another daunting fact that stoplights don't work to stop and create safe roads. Roundabouts do because you're forced to slow down. You don't have the option to try and run a yellow light, you have to slow down. And it also gives the pedestrians better access to cross one lane at a time versus trying to cross four, even at a controlled intersection. There's people that don't pay attention, accidents happen, so you just.
Mayor Gordon and Commissioner Duff, I'd like to just, I don't want to stifle any conversations and debating on which is better, but I'd like to give an update, given what was just shared on the options that were preferred. Right now, we're sitting at, if we look at everyone's number one choice, the highest ranking would be option number 4, which option number 4 is the alternative on your, up ahead there. It is the single roundabout with a 4th leg. If I am to add in who said option number 4 as their second option, we have 5 people who would be interested in that. And then for second choice, I have option number
3 was Bill and Luke.
3
yeah.
would be the next, and that is the double mini roundabout. I have 3 people who had voted for that as their second option. If I was to add in who said that as one of their other options, secondary to their first choice, it would be 5. So looking at first and second options, we kind of have a split for majority, if we're looking at that, is between those 2 options. If you'd like, we can go into the next item, which would be F2, intersection project cost share discussion, and we can tie that into discussions on which choice is preferred as we move forward, just to solidify those choices before you, if that is okay, to both the commissioners and council.
I wanted to add a little bit to this topic though first before we move on. So, I mean, I was just driving the other day and a mini roundabout, I mean, I think it would be a disaster. I mean, I think the amount of confusion as you watch people try to enter these and watching for where people are going, and I just think it really adds just a lot of moving parts to a lot of moving traffic on 5. And, but I mean, I think one roundabout to me would be acceptable, but there again, you have those 2 lanes trying to merge down to one, and is that gonna be an issue, just like it was with modeling for the double roundabout? You know, where you got people coming in and they're coming to that standstill. I mean, we got an awful lot of traffic trying to move through there. So anyway, I just wanted to add that, but any other discussion at all?
Yes. Let's say the county wasn't involved in this at all, just as a pretend. What would you do as the city of Isanti to make this the way you wanted it?
Well, I'd say probably right now it'd be 2-2.
I realize that, but.
Break the tie, Steve, break the
Yeah,
tie.
I'd like to hear what you guys figure out on this. You're gonna deal with it far more than we are.
Yeah.
As far as congestion.
I mean, if I had to guess, and I'll tell you what, I've had a ton of people, and I'm sure you guys have too, reach out and say that, oh, I want stoplight, I want roundabout, and I really thought that if I had to poll the citizens, I would say that they would say stoplight. And I still believe that probably would come out, but I mean, it's probably 50-50. I mean, it's.
They don't have the information we have, that's.
Right, yeah, I mean, I think.
That's like a new, roundabouts are newer, so they're not as comfortable, but all this, you follow the statistics.
Yeah,
The statistics all say, it's a pretty clear choice, so I know when we talked about this first, we were all unanimous, or it was a 4-0 vote on option 3. And then now we have a different model supposedly from WSB, which again, I don't think they did a great job with this, that kind of swayed 2 people to go the other direction. So what do you believe? Do you believe the model or do you believe the numbers they gave us? It's kind of hard. So ideally, it'd be nice if we had an engineer, or a traffic study firm that would give us more data, but we have what we have, so. I mean, if the fact
Yeah, I
that.
think that's what's tough about it, is we don't know for sure.
Yeah,
if
they
our
didn't do a good
data's,
job for us, I don't think, and
you know,
it's really frustrating.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that a little bit of the challenge is change.
Mm-hmm.
Most people, but not maybe everybody, has driven through a roundabout probably by this time in life. And so I think they'll learn to navigate and figure it out there. And if they don't like it, then they'll seek out an alternative route. But, part of it is just change and relearning how to navigate there as well. So I think in the long run, the study shows, the experts say this is the best solution for safety, longest solution for traffic flow, best solution for business here. So I'm not an expert, I didn't study it. I'll tell you the Freakonomics, listen to that baby. It is amazing. Plenty of places are doing this, and the statistics all lead towards roundabouts in every category. And so I just personally, sure, we all have an opinion, but boy, we have experts, we have
Two engineers.
county engineer here, we got city, that kind of thing, and so
Well,
I
we
think
don't
it's
have
important.
Mike Waring here either, and I think he was about the stoplights.
Jason, we never did ask you that question. I mean,
Yeah.
if you had a choice, which would you prefer?
Well, I mean, from the results of the report, from an engineering perspective, the double mini is the most cost-effective and solves the solution with the highest level of service. That's the kick out of the report. From the.
Option 3.
From the city's, master plan of connectivity of the roads, we did have this segment of grass that we're talking about for the land acquisition on a state aid route since we became a state aid city with that ultimate intention of rerouting that road, to have a single intersection there and through north-south. And then looking at the results then with that in mind, the signalized four-leg has the higher level of service for a four-legged intersection than the single roundabout does. So, I guess if we were able to obtain that land at a reasonable price, going to the four-legged signal does fit kind of our master plan.
So let me put it to you this way. If we if we said you can have County Road 5, what would you do? That's,
I've
here's County Road 5.
I've had that
Tell
thought.
me what you wanna do.
Luke's been waiting for you to ask that.
That's fine.
I have
You
been.
guys have at it.
And Jason, I agree with you 100% on your analysis there. So option 2, right, would be your, if you could get it.
Right, and, I mean, those are the two kind of key points on the results here. If the fourth leg is reasonable, or we have the rights to it, the results of this are showing, making that four-legged intersection signalized had the higher level of service for the long term out of the four-legged options.
But that's also ignoring the fact that we don't have an option 6, which is both roundabouts with the addition of the property for a connection. So we don't have that data. Because the other option with the Minco addition only has a straight intersection. It doesn't have the other roundabout. So I would suspect that the dual roundabout with the addition of the Minco property will be hugely successful. We just don't have that information, so we can't say that it's gonna be better to have an intersection there if we don't have the data. If this were the city's road, I would honestly say that we need to hire a different engineering firm and get an actual traffic study. But that's, since you asked Steve, I think it's so hard to make this huge decision when we have numbers that nobody's very confident in. But, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, just to finish the topic of the signal topic, option 1, with only the 3 legs, if we don't lock in the land acquisition as either buying it or having a right of refusal or something, it really doesn't work in the long term. So I wouldn't really recommend option 1 if we do not have a locked-in way of getting that land, because eventually, Credit Union Drive isn't gonna work with the left turn, and we're gonna be sending people that 3/4 of a mile route down and around through town. Like, that specific situation just really doesn't function. And so, if we're able to get that land, then, option 1 could happen, and we could choose to do that third leg in the future, or whenever it's needed, but if it's not able to be obtained, it's really a high-risk thing to try and do that option one. Just an extra thing to throw out there. I know it wasn't one of the preferred options, and I guess if the land's not an option, then I'm glad that wasn't a preferred option.
I don't, Justin, your thoughts on this piece? A question I would have is, who services the road ultimately? If it's a county road, who ultimately services the road when it comes to plowing, maintenance, upkeep, those kind of things? Is it a county responsibility, or is it the city of Isanti responsibility?
If it's designated as a county state aid highway, that's where our county forces maintain all maintenance aspects, construction of that roadway. Same with the city, if it's city street, city maintains their own streets.
Right, so we do have a lot on the line here, because ultimately, it's our responsibility. So to just say, well, go ahead, city, take care of it, do what you want, we have to, I'm just saying, we have to recognize
Let me clarify
what works that, you know.
If we said you could have this road when this is done, how would you do it? And would you take it?
So I had this thought, and during my public works ride-along, I had talked to the plow driver, and he would get frustrated because people would call because Heritage Boulevard wouldn't be done or wouldn't be done right, and he doesn't have the jurisdiction to touch it. So I had always thought, well, what if we get this built, and what if the city takes over maintenance on it, but we take a portion of the county's taxpayer dollars to pay for it? Because I think our city staff is great, and I think our public works would do a great job of maintaining this whole intersection. You wouldn't have to worry about one leg getting plowed and one leg not. So I personally, this is something I was gonna bring up, is I would like to see the city sort of take over control of this if the tax dollars for that, you know, the city residents pay $3.5 million of taxes a year to the county. So if some of that money can be allotted back to the city to pay for staff to do this, take care of this, I think we'd be better off. And it is through the center of our city. We are gonna have, you know, a lot of people think that it's our responsibility, you know, so I get a lot of complaints on 5, even in front of the elementary school and the PD on the condition of the road. People think it's our responsibility because it's in the city, but it's not.
Well, what I'm getting at is, do you want the road?
Yeah. So that was
Do you
your
want
intent of the
ownership?
question.
Do you want ownership of that road? Would that be the preference of the city of Isanti to have ownership of that road?
We haven't really talked about that a lot.
I think it's worth discussing, because then you'll get what you want done on that road. I'm not saying we'll back out of doing this project, but I'm looking, this is just me talking.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at this and saying, why don't you take ownership of that road from Highway 65, say to County Road 10? Then you
The
can
city
get it done
limits.
the way you want.
It wouldn't go to 10, it would have to go to the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the end of
fine.
city
Let's stay
limits,
with the
but
bridge then. Let's
that,
just stay with the bridge.
I think that is a conversation for
future.
another day, another time.
Well,
I just don't, I think taking ownership on something it'd make everybody's life easier to a certain extent. Do you understand where I'm going with this?
I think it would too.
But at this point, that isn't, I don't think that's what we need to be looking at this point. right now.
Time-wise, I don't think that works with our deadline for grants, and I think that would make stuff a little bit messy, but,
When I'm talking about this, I'm saying we get the road done,
yeah,
and then you get it.
potentially talk about it or look into it. I think that's a good idea. I'd plan to bring that up at some point, actually.
I'm not
But that's
looking
just
to
me.
back out of the county's end of this right now. We're gonna have to do something no matter what.
Yep.
So if we look at it like we do this project, if we say we defer to you on how you want it done, and I'm not saying that's what we should do, commissioners, I'm just saying this is my thoughts. Then when it's done, we look at, you get from the bridge to the highway, it's yours.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is something that we would definitely entertain talking about. I mean, we do get a lot of feedback from city residents that think we take care of 5, and it is something where we always have to, well, call the county. But, Mike, I mean, just to kind of wrap, I don't, like I said, I don't know that we want to get into the weeds in that right now, and, you know, I think we, regardless of that, I mean, I think we want to make a decision with you guys that makes the most
But
sense.
part of that gets down to then, what do we wanna do versus what do you wanna do? with the
Right, and
road?
I think we've, my guess is we can find a compromise here, and, you know, but I mean, just, Mike, on, as far as if we were to take over 5, I mean, there's a financial obligation, of course, to that, and I know Luke had mentioned that, you know, we would want some revenue coming in if we're taking that on. I mean, what are your thoughts on something
Yeah,
like that?
I think the easiest way, if we were gonna do something like that, the easiest way to structure that would just to have some kind of a maintenance contract. Some kind of a maintenance agreement. Yeah, basically, it's, probably is forever the counties. I don't know that the state would even let that happen, but there's nothing to say that, you know, county says, here's X amount of dollars per year, city, now here are your responsibilities, listed them out. You plow, you do this, you do that, you do that. I mean, that's not uncommon in other cities and with counties.
Yep. And I could speak to that. So we have maintenance agreements of similar nature with other county roads and city limits, and it's paid, you know, paid back to the city some maintenance dollars to maintain that stretch of roadway. As far as ownership of the roadway, I've kind of done some calling, looked at it from a financial aspect. If you're looking at our CASA dollars or tax distribution fund from the gas tax, you have, the city has MSAS, we have CASA, so municipal street, that would be getting some revenue pulled, needs pulled for that segment of roadway. So it's not, I guess it would be more up to the city on a willingness to take on that road segment. And for clarity too, the termini would be, if for discussion, logical termini would be from Trunk Highway 65 to CASA 23, just for plowing operation standpoint, being a nice cutoff.
Yeah, I guess just to jump in on that, specifically, that's what I was thinking, it would go to Whiskey, but, you know, other turnbacks, I guess would be that term for transferring ownership over, that I've been involved with, usually involves either the original owner, the county, paying for the entire cost of a full reconstruction of it as part of that turnback process, so that the entity that, or the infrastructure that's turned over is in new, you know, starting condition, or the value of it is transferred over to the city to be able to pay for that, and then proceed from there. But that's why that's a pretty significant different topic, I think, on how to work out that turnback versus a maintenance agreement only for ultimate ownership of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely something we would consider in the future, and, it is something that we've talked about many times, so, yeah, no, I think we would entertain the idea, so. I mean, I guess right now, I mean, we're pretty well split. I mean, well, George and, I mean, if we took a vote right now, I mean, Steve, would you be able to come over to option 2 and,
I know Mike's conversation with him on this numerous times. He wants the lights. It would be 1 or 2. 2 probably would be his first choice, and 1 would be, matter of fact, I just had a conversation with him on Friday. And I know he said he's set for the lights.
Commissioner Warren did talk to me about not being able to attend the meetings this week and shared, you know, the stoplight option would be what he would like to see. If the goal of today is to take a vote on options, unfortunately, he is not here. So, you know, we can't cast a vote for him when he's absent. But that was his preferred option. However, that's without hearing the conversation of today as well. So we could have that in mind, that was based off of the presentations given by Justin and the conversations had at previous meetings, the option he would like to see. He also was not able to be here for this conversation.
I mean, I'd be curious, Justin, on your thoughts of option and just from the study and obviously working with recent studies on traffic flow and suggestions and that and expertise. How do you approach making those decisions on deciding on what's best for roads and highways and that within the county?
Yeah, so I guess to maybe clarify the question, Commissioner Berg, are you speaking in terms of the grand scale of our 360 miles of roadway we maintain, or this localized project within the city?
Well, I guess any expert advice that you get and studies that you receive on anything in the county when it comes to roadways, county roads, and how much validity do you give to that study that you've invested in or paid for experts to give us the information that beyond yourself and the city engineer, the rest of us don't think about this stuff on a daily basis or study it.
Yeah, if I'm understanding correctly, so the validity of this report, obviously, we hired a professional organization. They've given us this data that we've kind of looked at and have really had, the 5 alternatives that we've looked at. I think where the complication to some of this discussion is, we have 2 factors. We have, answer the question, are we going to make that land acquisition? Are we going to make that commitment for long-term corridor benefit? If so, then we look at those options. Looking at the report, I did pass this along to fellow peers at MnDOT. Had kind of a second look at this. There was some questions on level of service. There was some clarity. I know early on, the level of service that was relayed or maybe presented on option 3, the dual mini roundabout, was showing that, we can't believe that it'd be A's across the board. However, looking at that, you see that there's 2 intersections. We split up the level of service between 2 intersections. So it's going to kind of spread out that rating over 2 intersections than when you compare it to a combined intersection. There's some note to be taken on that aspect. If I'm looking at it, I look at a return on investment. So both city, county, we have a vested interest in public safety. Where there's a concern, this was a development-driven project with the Quick Trip addition, other developments in the area. We got to look at what's the city going to contribute to the cost of this improvement within the city limits. What's the county going to contribute? Answer the question if we're going to go forward with that land acquisition, and then boiling down to kind of the engineering aspect of the report. My perspective on if we're looking at a 4-legged intersection, alternative 2 and alternative 4, the level of services compared, yes, the ratings are different, but the level of service delays are very similar as far as looking at those options. I wouldn't say it's a flip of the coin. Obviously, there's pros and cons to both the signal and roundabout type intersection. But to kind of answer your point, if I look at this, I look at all aspects. I look at the cost involved as some component, not the driving factor. Safety is number 1 priority. Looking at that, and then just looking at the overall investment, looking at long-term, if the solution is decided upon, voted upon, is that going to serve us into 2043, 20 years from now? Nobody has a crystal ball, but we got to make our best judgment, best information on today's terms to make sure that we have a long-standing project.
So I have a question for you, Justin. We weren't given an option 3 with the addition of the Minco leg. Now, in your opinion, so we had some slight concerns about backup onto Highway 65. In your opinion, if we do option 3 and then we are able to acquire that Minco property, how much would that help the alternative 3? I mean, do you think it would make it an intersection that is almost perfect and can be competed with by these other ones? I mean, we don't have the information to add that leg, but I think it would greatly help. I mean, do you have any input on that? Because we don't really have the information.
Yeah, Councilmember Merrill, that's a great question. I think the question that both Jason and I haven't been able to really put our thumb on is the queuing internally of those 2 roundabouts.
Okay.
And looking if you add a 3rd leg, now you have, there was some discussion, even talking to peers and kind of getting a second opinion on that dual mini roundabout, is whether you have some of those conflicting turns, whether that causes queuing internally between those 2 roundabouts. And if that's the case, if we're looking at the layout of alternative 3, would it mean that we'd have to close off some of that circulating routes, going to more of a peanut-shaped type roundabout? So I don't know the answer, to be blunt with you, if it would improve or, hinder that intersection performance, adding that 3rd leg. I wouldn't see it, it's obviously going to be on kind of user preference. Now, are we going to lose some traffic that's going eastbound, taking that first roundabout to access that alternative, that rerouting of Credit Union Drive? I really don't know the answer without having modeling or looking at some of the report.
I've got a point of clarification or question for perhaps you, Jason. Is the purpose for us meeting tonight to identify a preferred alternative for your grant request? And let me just, maybe a follow-up to that. We're not making a final design option decision tonight. We're making a recommended one that you put into the grant to MnDOT. Is that your understanding, or am I missing the boat on what we're trying to accomplish here tonight?
Yeah, I guess, with the grant deadline coming, we do need to have a preferred alternative to put into the grant and go after the money. Once we, let's say we get that grant, you know, we do have to more or less do that preferred alternative to use that money. We wouldn't be able to just change it. So we do pretty much have to be to a preferred alternative to be able to know that we're going after the money for the right thing. You know, I guess the other obvious, the primary reason of that, choosing a preferred alternative, is to determine if we need to go after that piece of land and how much, you know, is willing to be paid to make it whatever cost value that the city and county are believing it's worth spending to, you know, finish making that decision of what's the preferred alternative. So, so it's those two parts, but.
Yeah, so Commissioner Duff, ultimately it is to have a decision tonight. If the preferred decision to move forward is a fourth leg, to give me an alternate and give staff the direction that if we aren't able to acquire that fourth leg, what is your next alternative preferred option that we would move forward with the grant and ultimately do if we receive the grant funds?
I like option 3 because it's so great the way it is. You don't need to add, it doesn't matter, we're not relying on Minco to sell us this property for a fair price. Option 3 has already shown for the next 20 years it has a good level of service. So I don't know, I don't know, that would be cheaper.
I don't know if they can sell that land for that much money.
They're
means
not
that
going to be
there's
able to.
not-
It's a,
The land around it is not selling for that much.
and that's another discussion for our closed session, but there's a lot that could be said about that as well.
Well, so let's maybe, I mean, the goal, I think, for tonight definitely is to pick a preferred option, without a doubt. I think that's the reason that we wanted to kind of get us all in the same room. And the other day when we had talked, everybody, I mean, maybe with my coercion a little bit, was on board with option 2, right? So when we had kind of all talked, that we thought that was sort of at least a compromise solution there. And like Jason said, I mean, that would be his, if we can get the fourth leg, that would be his number one option. And I would say that if we can't get the fourth leg, that, you know, number 5 with one roundabout, I could get behind that for sure, so.
I think that's gonna create a left turn issue off of Minco Drive though. And then you're gonna have to have people drive through all these other neighborhoods, and you're gonna congest that new leg with people that are leaving the dollar store and Credit Union Drive, and then you're gonna have a traffic problem that's pushed over towards Broadway Street. I mean, you're just pushing the problem down the road. You're not solving it.
Yeah, I mean, I think eventually you would have to make Minco, the Credit Union Drive, a right in, right out, which would make even more sense that they would sell that property, because in the long run, it would be a benefit for them to have the fourth leg going through there, and because they're eventually gonna lose that access from the north side of 5, just because we won't have any other choice, so.
So what,
Even then, when you put that in consideration, the single roundabout, even if we didn't acquisition the property today, when that note does come to them and they see it's an issue, they may turn around and give us the damn property.
So,
I'm just
right.
using that as an example. That fourth leg, no matter what, is right here, but is it necessary with option 5? No. The single roundabout is not even, it doesn't necessarily need there. If we did get it, it would always be, can be redone at that point. So as I'm understanding this meeting was to go into this closed session, discuss that property purchase, what we can and can't do. Once we make that determination, we could sit here and argue for 18 hours, option 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. We can argue that until we do not know if we are going to pursue that leg. That is the first known and always known thing that we have to do at this point.
Well, I agree.
Go into a closed session then.
Yeah, no, but I mean, the goal was to make this decision on what option do we want to have, because you don't know if we want to add the property acquisition or not if we choose for level, option 3, for example, when we
It's
wouldn't
the
need to
most
do that.
risk-averse version is option 3.
So yeah, no, I think we really have to have a decision before we go into that closed session, or we may not even need to go into closed session.
Mayor, I have a follow-up question for Jason. In that LRIP grant request, can we use those funds if we are successful for part of that land purchase?
No, I guess. So that grant is for the construction
Okay.
cost itself. With that said, the construction cost itself is gonna be over the maximum we can go after, the 1.5 million. And so we would be maxing out the grant either way. I think all the options except for option 1 was gonna have a construction cost over the 1.5. So it kind of negates what's eligible once the actual eligible thing is over the maximum. And so, technically, we're able to max it out with, the preferred alternatives that we're talking about with the reroutes, at least. And so we're already gonna be able to use all of it if we're allotted it. It's just, once you max it out, everything over it doesn't apply either way.
So I have another question here on, nobody's really said anything against the Credit Union Drive roundabout. Is there a con to that roundabout there? I mean, that seems to be the discussion. Is it worth it or is it not? I don't see, nobody said a con about having that. And then also, if you think about pedestrian traffic from the development over there, like Dairy Queen, Family Dollar, even McDonald's, I've walked across the street between Minco and Quick Trip, and that is scary. If you don't do any sort of traffic control at that intersection as well, how are pedestrians gonna cross the street? The double roundabout solves that issue as well. So I haven't heard anything bad about the Credit Union Drive roundabout or why everybody's or
Well,
some
I
people are
think,
against
to
it.
be perfectly honest, that road shouldn't even be there. There should be a crossroad from East Dual Boulevard. Whoever put that road in there, I don't know. When you go down 95, there's always crossroads all the way. These are wonky, if you ask
And
me.
that road was put in back in the 80s.
Right.
So there isn't anybody sitting up here that had anything to do with that.
No, I'm
And
not
that's
saying
always that
anyone had
foresight.
anything to do with it, but I'm just saying that it doesn't make sense on how the roads are. There's West Dual Boulevard doesn't have a crossroads, East Dual Boulevard doesn't have a crossroad, and then you got your Credit Union Drive.
I think that roundabout does with Luke's future thinking as far as that development of that farmland. I think that's gonna be pretty critical to maintain that road there and both those roundabouts. And then if you can acquire that property, if it goes down in value, because no one's gonna be interested, I think there's gonna be a lot of easy traffic flow through there because traffic's gonna be coming in and out to different businesses and that, and it's going to decrease your traffic flow from east to west overall because they're gonna be peeling off going into those businesses. But I think that roundabout by Minco and keeping that road open period allows for your future development and access and then also business attraction for that field.
Yep. So Krista, you had just said that East Dual Boulevard should have been continued south because basically a straight intersection is better. So that's why when I brought up the potential of adding a road big time to the east of Quick Trip, that would create Credit Union Drive going straight. And then if you acquire the Minco property, you'd have East Dual Boulevard going straight. So now you have perfectly straight roads that you could, the whole traffic situation, you can't do that if you don't do anything like the roundabout there now. So if this is the best long-term solution, the roundabout gives you so much more flexibility.
You can still have an entrance
And I have a problem with,
by Quick Trip.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Let me make a motion here.
Have an entrance by Quick Trip right there. It doesn't mean, that's not gonna be utilized.
Right, but I'm saying to add a road to the east side of the Quick Trip road there, or to somehow make that into a road
How
there
much
so
is that gonna cost?
I don't know, but I'm to the point now where I think public safety and getting this to flow right now is essential because we're gonna have so much more development in this town that if we don't do it now, it's gonna be like a Band-Aid, just like when Quick Trip came to town, there were people here in in the audience that said that there was gonna be a traffic problem here, and there is. We have to do something about it now. We have to think long-term. We can't just do, oh, this will get us by for 5 years. We have to think the long-term, what's the best solution for everybody?
Has anyone talked to Quick Trip about
They said-
participating in this?
Commissioner LaRoe, I did speak to the regional, I forget his title now, regional person in charge of layout and design. And I sent him the complete study that we had from WSB. He did have his engineers review it, and he did provide feedback. He said while all the options they can make work, obviously it's just keeping open to their entrance, and he said they were willing to work with the city and county to modify what we would call like the diesel entrance, that one that's right across from Credit Union Drive there. But ultimately, if they had their choice to choose, they would go with a signal because they preferred, or they thought that that was a preferred option for the truck traffic.
So-
But they said that they could make all options work. They're all viable options, they thought.
So I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion, and remember, the city, when, really what we're doing is making a recommendation to the county, and you guys can take what our opinion is, you know, and run with it however you would choose, but I'll make a motion for option 2 in the event that we can acquire that property, with number 5 being the alternative, that if we don't acquire the property, that would be the second alternative. And I would say on option 2, that would also include a right-in, right-out on Credit Union Drive. That would include access for Isanti Village Apartments onto the new road, and it would include widening the entrance into the strip mall there where Subway would be. And it would include, if possible, a longer right-hand turn lane for the traffic going into Quick Trip.
I'd second that.
So I have a motion from myself and a second from Councilman Lundin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
I'll make a motion to go with alternate 3. I mean, the data don't lie, and it leaves us the best options for the future. That's my motion.
I'll second.
I have a second from, I have a motion from Councilman Merrill and a second from Councilman Heeman for option 3. And what did you say your second was? Or you didn't have a second one?
I don't think there's any, I mean, I would like to see the connections being
Well, I
made,
guess
so.
option 3 wouldn't
so
require, you wouldn't need a second option, so.
But it's option 3, but I still want to look into the Minco edition and potentially future, but option 3 doesn't tie our hands, so that's really the only option at this
Option
point.
3 with still looking into property
Yes.
acquisition. Okay, so I have that motion from Councilman Merrill and a second from Councilman Heeman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Aye. We're tied 2-2, so that's, take it from there.
I feel like I'm at our House of Representatives right now, down in DC. All right, we'll do the same thing. Do we have a motion on the table for one of the options?
Sure, I make a motion to approve number 3 with the option to purchase the land property behind Minco, there to provide a future 4-leg.
Discussion on this?
Need a second first before we can have open discussion. Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'm not opposed to this, I'm just not ready to.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, hearing no second, we will open the discussion back up. Do we have another motion?
Just move that we go into closed session so we can decide what we're gonna do with the land, with the acquisition before we make this decision.
I agree. I mean, I think that makes sense, because if we're not getting the land, that takes out some options,
Yes.
right?
So I think.
I mean, if we're not getting the land, it takes out options if we can't agree on that.
Yeah.
So I agree with
Yeah.
Commissioner Westerberg on that, and, yeah, I'm sorry, I think you were trying to get that across earlier, too.
And so we come out of the closed session, then
Then we can make the decisions.
Okay.
Yeah, then we can make the decision. We don't have to do the decision now, but the land is in the way there. And I think the other Steve made the same suggestion as well.
we'll go with Amanda first. Did you have a question or a comment? Okay, you're just pointing your pen, okay. Josie, did you?
So I do want to just make a point to the council and commissioners, before we go into closed session, we may have want to have a discussion on the share of who's paying what portion if we were to acquire any land. That discussion needs to happen in open session, it cannot be within the closed session. So if we want to talk about a two-thirds, one-third split of this potential leg or of any other cost share, that should occur first. Well, I shouldn't say first. It can
Unless we
occur
vote-
after, however, it has to be done in open session.
Unless we select option 3, which looks like we're not at this point, because then we would not have a land use discussion, land purchase discussion.
Right.
So if we want to go into item F2 to have a discussion, we can always go back into the intersection discussion for preferred options. But if we want to have a cost share discussion on if we were to move forward with a fourth leg, who would pay what portion as it relates to the project as a whole?
All right, so we'll move our meeting on to F2, the intersection project cost share discussion. And I guess that really is, I mean, I think we as a council, if I were to guess, we would like to continue the same relationship, you know, in the same plan that we have the two-third, one-third. And that would be if we had to add that fourth leg and acquire that property, we'd like to see that paid for in that way as well. Just because we're solving a problem that's two-third, one-third on 5 still, you know what I mean? So, and then, of course, after that, the city would take care of everything going forward from there, but that is what we'd like to see, I think, is, would you guys be in agreement with that, or?
Yep.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I know it's a city road, but like I said, the reason, the new road would be a city road. But the only reason that we're putting that road in is to help solve the problem with, you know, the two-third leg on the county road and the single leg of the city road, so. So that was my reasoning behind that, and we've approached everything else to this point, to that point, so.
Again, I'll say that I think we need to go into a closed session and decide where we're at with the money on that before we can even make a decision on this.
Well, I think, to Josie's point, I know the procedures of legally how we go forward on this,
We
but
could discuss, we would discuss, though,
Do we want
the
the
money,
land?
yes, that we just, you know, where are we at on the purchase of that land? And then
Depends on how
once
much
we
it is,
figure-
right?
Yeah, I would like
Yeah.
to have that decided before we have this discussion.
well, that, and I would probably make a little bit of a counter argument. I don't want to beat up with the city, but it is going to be a city road. So I don't know if that one-third, two-third formula works per se with this. And I think some of our county funds are a little bit more limited in what we can do with land acquisitions. I don't know how it works with the city, but our hands are a little bit more tied there. So bottom line is we want to do the best option, obviously, going forward. So I want to say that as a caveat. But I mean, it is hard to throw out an exact percentage or dollar amount with a lot of unknowns.
I agree, but we do have to remember that the city residents pay $3.5 million a year in taxes to the county. So, I get what you're saying too. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but it's hard not to think that that's fair to do the split that way, but that's just my counter to it.
Yeah, and like I
Yeah.
said, I already said too, I mean, we're doing, the only reason the city would entertain doing that road is to help solve the problem that we share on County Road 5. And so that's why I would push to do the two-third, one-third split, just like we've done with everything else, so.
Just clarification, I think Josie, you might have mentioned this. If that road went in, and then we did have an access road over to the strip mall and the apartment complex that can come into that road as an option, would there pretty much be a zero option to have any business buy property on that road for development? Because of the setbacks, we're just pretty much
So Commissioner
dissolve
Berg,
that option.
I'll pull up the plat.
'Cause of
So
that.
here we have the plat, and you can see, so the parcel right here with the star is the parcel that we're talking about. You can see that right here, this is city lift station in this corner, which is that easement, and then you'll see that this is a drainage and utility
yep.
easement right here, so it doesn't leave a whole lot. If we were to put in a road that would give access to 120 Heritage Boulevard address with those apartments, it would be somewhere in here.
Right.
And in talking to our city engineer, possibly putting a culvert, we can just make this pond a little bit bigger on this side, this a little bit bigger here to accommodate any additional water flow, but it would work to put in a small city street there to connect.
Right, okay. Yeah, I was just curious if there was any opportunity for the city then to sell property, you know, on the east side of that road for any kind of business piece, and then you can have, yeah, that's what I was curious about, because that makes a difference in,
No, yeah,
you know,
no.
your ability to then sell the property and earn tax money off of that piece, and then I think that would change maybe our conversation of how much we
That's why I
take
brought
on
up
and
that.
not take on.
That's
Yeah.
why I brought up where they said it's 61,000 square feet.
Right,
Where usable is 27,000 square feet. Even then, that
It's
isn't
almost
much.
not buildable.
It's really not
Right,
much
yeah.
buildable.
I would like to bring up the point in talking to Minco Credit Union to see if we did put that road through there, if they were interested in acquiring that, let's just call it a sliver on the east side of what would be a
Okay.
fourth leg. And I asked them that for possible expansion, even for their parking lot or something, and they were not interested. They were desired to sell the parcel as a whole.
oh, yeah, okay.
But
That was,
that
yeah,
might
I just wanted
change.
clarification on that piece there.
Justin?
Yeah, I'll just speak in terms of the cost participation. I know it's a safety concern, both city and county. I would like to bring to light, you know, that this has been a development-driven project. It hasn't been on our forecast of long-term planning for capital improvements. So kind of getting at the cost share, my opinion would be looking at cost share based on legs of the intersection, so. that
Based on
would-
what?
Legs of the intersection, shared legs.
Okay.
So if you have a four-legged intersection, that would be a 50-50 split, or one-third, two-third, as we've kind of assumed on some of these alternatives. That was the understanding going into kind of the final stages of the report prior to this land option coming on the table.
Makes sense.
Change your opinion on
I
what you
th-
wanna do.
I think we should have our closed session and talk about this stuff, and then if we decide we want to go forward, maybe have open the session back up about the cost share, because I think the price is what really matters.
Yeah, I would agree. I think now would maybe be a good time to go into that closed session, and then we'll come out and provide some more answers on some of these other questions.
Mayor Gordon, just one last, if I
Go ahead.
may. For the cost discussion, as far as the land acquisition, as Commissioner Duff had expressed, there's limited funds from the county level to put towards a city street. The county would be accepting of, you know, extending our right-of-way out to that 60-foot from center line, the 27 feet along that road frontage of the parcel. That'd be, amounts to about 10%, looking at that area. That would be kind of a typical application of our county highways.
Mayor, before we go to closed session, I want to thank the public for coming, giving their input. I think whatever designs we have to think of the business owners along this corridor, and I appreciate, Don, you coming in and expressing your concerns with your ingress, egress, important factor in all this, so thank you. With that, do we formally move to close for public session?
Yeah, do we need a motion to go into closed session, or?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
I'll second.
I have a motion to go into closed session from Councilman Merrill and a second from Councilman Heeman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0.
And do we need to do the same on the county side then? We will. Do we have a motion to go into public, to close session?
Second?
I did not make a motion, I just asked.
Oh, you're explaining it. Okay.
So moved.
Didn't word it very well, so Commissioner Berg, Commissioner Westerberg, Commissioner Berg, I'm getting tongue-tied. We have a motion to move into public, into closed session. Any other, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You'll want to do the same, is I need you to read why we are closing this into closed session, and then we will all go into closed session.
I don't have oh, yes, I do. Yep, okay. So closed session for discussions to purchase real property, PID 16.077.0020 pursuant to Minnesota statutes, section 13D 5, subsection 3C.
Thank you. And you as well.
Ditto that. Oh, no, it went down.
Now what'd you do?
On your agenda, it's on your agenda, right under number 3, if you want to read that.
We'll move into closed session for discussions to purchase real property, PID number 16.077.0020 pursuant to Minnesota statute section 13D.05 subdivision 3C.